As dawn broke over the ruins of Nuremberg on April 18, 1945, Lieutenant Michael J. Daly charged forward under relentless German machine gun fire from MG34s and MG42s. Neutralizing the crew with precise shots from his M1 carbine, Daly pushed ahead of the rubble to clear the road for his company. Alone, the lieutenant engaged a 6-man patrol armed with rocket launchers. Always cool under combat, the Irish-American neutralized the enemy with top-notch accuracy. Not content with this, Mike Daly pressed forward in a city fraught with danger. He led from the front, entering a park to face yet another machine gun. Daly held his breath and pulled the trigger. Moments later, the third enemy machine gun was neutralized. Filled with adrenaline and inspiring his men, Daly went on the hunt for another enemy crew. He went out in the open, followed by his men, when the abrupt silence was broken by enemy fire, and Daly was down. Michael Joseph Daly's resilience and determination shone through, despite his contrarian nature towards dress codes and punctuality. The New York City native was an exemplary student and a natural leader. Standing tall and handsome, he entered West Point with a burning desire to become a prestigious Army officer. However, he faced some challenges, particularly in mathematics, but he never let that deter him. In late 1942, a barely 18-year-old Mike Daly, already weighing over 190 pounds and standing over 6 feet tall, found himself studying for one of his exams alongside George S. Patton IV, son of the Army's most famous general, when he abruptly threw his books away and shouted, quote, "To hell with this. I'm going to war." Michael Daly would not graduate from West Point, a tough blow in the eyes of his father, Paul G. Daly, a highly decorated veteran of World War I, known as the Major. However, Michael saw the opportunity to redeem himself by enlisting in the Army and joining the war effort even sooner. Thus, the young soldier was dispatched to Fort McClellan, Alabama, for basic training. There, Mike Daly unleashed his inner self during boot camp, which he thought challenging but refreshing. In the early months of 1944, Michael Daly was assigned as an infantry replacement and made his way to Fort Shanks, New Jersey, to prepare for his deployment to the UK. Soon after he arrived in Britain, Daly was placed in the 18th Infantry 1st Division, his father Paul Daly's former regiment, thanks to some behind-the-scenes efforts by his father to ensure his son would see action promptly. On June 6, 1944, Daly hit Omaha Beach with the second wave on D-Day, bravely pulling an injured fellow soldier through the surf as bullets flew around him. Mike then fought his way across the treacherous sands and up the dizzying heights as part of the first phase of Operation Overlord. Thousands of men fell under the accurate fire of the German MG42 machine guns. Still, Daly charged forward with unwavering determination, one of the lucky few who survived the daunting task without a scratch. Just 2 weeks after the heroic landings in Normandy, Daly once again displayed his mettle, distinguishing himself by bravely serving as a forward observer under heavy enemy fire, an act of courage that earned him his first Silver Star. 19-year-old Mike gained the admiration of his commanders for his boldness and readiness to volunteer for complex tasks, including leading patrols as the point man and operating as a forward observer or sniper. 1 month later, when the Allied forces pierced the German defenses at Normandy, Daly and his unit became some of the first Americans to liberate Paris. Nonetheless, there was no rest for Mike and the GIs. In September 1944, while fighting entrenched enemy opposition close to Baptiste, Belgium, Daly was hit by German shrapnel from a merciless mortar barrage. The robust Catholic was immediately dispatched to a British hospital to see his wounds healed. Once there, he was invited by a friend of his father, General McCarroll Sandy Patch, commander of the 7th Army, to gather his strength at his headquarters. While Mike finished his recovery, the Wehrmacht abruptly launched the Ardennes Offensive in December 1944, taking the American troops by complete surprise. Thus, Mike Daly prepared for combat, urging Patch to return him to the 1st Division, but the severe weather decided otherwise. Instead, analyzing Mike Daly's excellent combat reports, General Patch offered him a commission as a 2nd lieutenant as his aide in the 7th Army. Mike accepted the commission, but declined the position of the general's aide. Eager for combat, the Irish-American joined Able Company, 1st Battalion, 15th Regiment, 3rd Division, in late December 1944. When the young lieutenant joined his unit, the 3rd desperately fought the German troops for control of the western Alsatian town of Siegelsheim, near the Vosges Mountains. Lieutenant Daly found a new home with the battle-tested members of the 3rd that had been fighting the Germans since the North African and Italian campaigns. While the GI seized control of Siegelsheim, the German High Command, desperate to reclaim momentum, unleashed Operation Nordwind under the cloak of New Year's Eve celebrations. This offensive threw primary armor and infantry forces against General Patch's stretched-thin 7th Army. Nordwind's ambitious goal was to forge a junction with the German troops battling in the Ardennes, intensifying their pressure on the Allies. In a bold maneuver, German troops even breached the Rhine River just north of Strasbourg, casting a shadow over the city's fate. Yet what met them was not retreat, but resilience. Allied forces' stubborn and adaptable defense gradually bled the German offensive dry. By January 25, 1945, the once fearsome Nordwind troops were defeated. Fortune favored Michael Daly, but the 15th Regiment sector remained calm amid the storm. His division was on high alert in Alsace, ready to seal off the German salient, known as the Colmar Pocket. Daly's platoon was friendly, although the men were surprised by their lieutenant's youth and boyish appearance. A Silver Star and a Purple Heart were enough to convince them that their affable LT was a seasoned veteran just like them. While Daly familiarized himself with his men, General Eisenhower launched Operation Cheerful to eliminate German resistance at the Colmar Pocket. Named after the city of Colmar, the salient thrust itself westward from the Rhine River, spreading across 45 miles at its base and penetrating 25 miles deep into the foreboding Vosges Mountains. The perimeter of this menacing pocket stretched over 130 miles, encircling an area of 850 square miles. This German stronghold created a perilous 50-mile breach in the Rhine front of the 1st French Army and posed a dire threat to the rear of the American 3rd and 7th Armies, jeopardizing the entire Allied stance in Alsace. On January 20th, 1945, the American and French troops launched the attack simultaneously, attacking the enemy from the north and south. Daly and his men of the 3rd Division were thrust into the whirlwind of combat and dangerous weather. During an attack on the road junction at Maison Rouge, Lieutenant Daly and Able Company were severely outnumbered by enemy infantry and tanks. Lacking anti-armor capabilities, Mike Daly was forced to retreat under intense German mortar and machine gun fire. Still, his leadership skills became crucial for an organized withdrawal toward the nearby woods. A day later, the Germans counterattacked Daly's Able Company. Armed with his M1 carbine, Daly constantly rushed from foxhole to foxhole, inspiring his troops to concentrate fire against the enemy until he was forced to retreat. Barely having any rest after the firefight, Daly's men were put on the road again to capture Reitwehr. Under the cover of darkness, Daly led his GIs 300 yards into a German stronghold with a machine gun nest. Hell broke loose, and tracers illuminated the woods. Bullets flew around Daly as he sprinted toward the enemy nest. Some 30 yards near the enemy emplacement, Daly mercilessly opened fire with his carbine, eliminating the enemies in the foxhole and leading his men against the second line of defense. Daly's company captured over 20 enemy troops, thanks to his extraordinary leadership, earning him a 2nd Silver Star. The momentum of combat continued when the U.S. Army launched Operation Kraut the first week of February, crossing the Colmar Canal and striking the city's defenses. Daly's unit was dispatched to secure bridges across the Rhine. His men were traversing over 800 yards of flat terrain when abrupt fire from hostile mortars and artillery emplacements pinned them down. As Daly's soldiers retreated to find cover, 3 concealed machine guns caught them in the crossfire. Seeking cover in a ditch and thinking on his feet, Daly stood up on the road and opened fire against the enemy to draw their fire while his soldiers retreated. The lieutenant became the pinnacle of courage under fire for over half an hour. In the open, fully visible to the Germans, a lone Daly faced a hailstorm of enemy bullets. Amid this chaos, Daly spotted a 15-man German patrol edging closer on his flank. With determination, he drew his pistol and opened fire, swiftly taking down 2 attackers. His quick action alerted his men, sparking a fierce skirmish to repel the advancing enemy. Daly's courage did not falter. He assisted the wounded, ensuring no man was left behind while they withdrew. When Able Company returned to safety, Daly was awarded a 2nd Oak Leaf Cluster for his Silver Star. Wounded and decorated, Daly and his 60 men were ordered to return to the combat zone and seize the German emplacement. They launched themselves into the fray across 500 yards of open field. What followed was chaos and madness, but orders were orders. The Teutonic machine guns mowed down over 40 of Daly's GIs. Less than 20 approached the enemy stronghold. Then, a Sherman tank blew a hole in the stronghold, allowing Daly's men to pour in and destroy the machine gun nests. Intense and fast-paced, close-quarters combat ensued. Able Company's commander was wounded by a grenade, leaving Daly in charge of leading the assault. Consumed by adrenaline, pistol in one hand and carbine in the other, Daly rallied the troops and led them against the entrenched Germans. Just as Daly and his men secured the position, the Germans launched a counterattack with a devastating barrage from self-propelled artillery. While Daly and the men rushed to cover from house to house, enemy panzers approached under the cover of the artillery. Enemy accuracy was so devastating that by the time the attack came to an end, over 25 men from Able Company were reported as missing or killed in action. Although successful, the 3rd Division suffered over 4,500 casualties, inflicting over 4,000 casualties against the German 19th Army. Due to his commendable actions during the Colmar operations, Daly was awarded 2 additional oak leaf clusters to his Silver Star. During the award ceremony, Major Kenneth B. Potter, commander of the 1st Battalion, stated that Daly's service was, quote, exemplary, evidencing a very high degree of leadership, aggressiveness, and organizational ability under the most difficult conditions. By April 1945, Daly had become a 1st lieutenant and was attacking Nuremberg with his company when a sudden burst of machine gun fire pinned his unit. Daly reacted instantly. Commanding his men to find cover, he charged forward alone, his carbine in hand, dodging bullets as before. With precise shots, Daly silenced the 3-man crew operating the menacing MG42. Daly pressed forward, spotting an enemy patrol with rocket launchers ready to attack Allied tanks. Without hesitation, Daly advanced solo again, securing a strategic position to engage. As rocket fire and machine guns targeted him, the rubble around Daly exploded into chaos. Yet, in the eye of the storm, Daly remained calm and methodically eliminated all German personnel from the patrol. Daly then entered a park, where a concealed German machine gun fired at his men. The lieutenant took down the gunner with his carbine, and completely exposed, eliminated the rest of the crew. His relentless advance continued in a close-quarters duel, where Daly took care of a 3rd machine gun nest. By single-handedly neutralizing 15 enemy soldiers and silencing 3 machine guns, Daly's extraordinary courage and selfless leadership earned him the Medal of Honor. A day later, however, tragedy struck the brave lieutenant when he was shot through the head, the round entering one of his ears and exiting from the opposite cheek. Despite the severe wound, Mike Daly fully recovered and traveled to the White House to receive the Medal of Honor under President Truman's term, becoming one of America's greatest military heroes.